Well, hello everyone, and thank you for joining me. I'm Jill Bloom, group publisher of Walls and Ceilings, and welcome to If Walls Could Talk. It's such an honor to have with me two great friends from PABCO Gypsum. We've got Mike Amaral, who is the QuietRock product manager, and Ben Shafer, who is the senior sound acoustician, right?
You
I
got
can
it.
always, this is
Yep.
a, I love this title. I can't wait to talk about it some more. I didn't know that an acoustician existed, but here we go. This is awesome. Mike and Ben, thank you so much for joining me.
Hey, welcome.
You're welcome. Thanks for inviting us.
Most definitely. Well, let's start there. Actually, Mike, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit of your background and what led you into drywall and the acoustics industry.
Wow, how much time do you have? I mean, this my story with this product line with QuietRock is kind of funny because it started, oh gosh, probably way back in like 2000-ish. I was working with a high-tech company and we were selling the company off and getting ready to get out of the biz. And this is back in like the dot-com era, right? And that one of the guys that owned the company said, "Hey, I'm starting up this little side project. Might need a little bit of help. So, I know you're going to be looking for work when we sell this thing off. Why don't you come over and help us out, part-time for a couple weeks?" So, sure, why not? Um, and that was, 24 years ago.
Okay.
And it was part-time for about a week. But, I do have a background in music, so, not to, pun on words, but acoustics just resonated with me. It made sense in some weird way, and just getting into the whole building materials industry was refreshing. Love the people in the industry. It's just a great crowd.
I love it. Well, that kind of goes side by side with musician, acoustician,
There you
so that
are.
with Ben's title, this is there's some things that are connecting here. But Ben, how about you? Tell me your background. How did you get involved?
Yeah, so I graduated so I did an undergraduate degree in physics and then a graduate degree in physics as well, and studying sound. I also I'm an instrumentalist. I'm a piano player. I've always loved music, and I've always loved math as well. So physics studying sound just made sense to me. And so that's what I graduated with my master's, my undergraduate. And then right out of college, I got hired with and met Mike Amaral at the company that made QuietRock. And I've kind of been doing this ever since. I mean, I never did anything with building materials during my graduate studies. I worked with computer fans, doing noise control for computer fans, but then I quickly uh, started to love the getting involved with the building industry, talking with the contractors and the architects and the designers, and really getting to know that industry. It was really fun.
All right, from computer fans to sound dampening technology there to
Right.
contractors. This is awesome. Well, Quiet Rock is definitely known for its, speaking of that, for sound damping technology. I mean, how does it actually work? Because, for somebody who doesn't know, the technology, drywall is drywall, but it's not. So how does that work? How
Right.
does it make it, how is it different from traditional drywall?
So I'll give you an answer, but then I'll turn to Mike and I'll say,
Okay.
Mike, maybe interpret this for me a little bit. Um,
Right?
so how damping works, just like in a car with a suspension system, right? When you're
Oh
driving a
yeah.
car, you don't have a suspension, you're feeling everything. You're feeling all the vibration, right? If you add damping to your suspension, then what happens is that the wheels will vibrate, but you won't feel it as much when you're driving the car, which is great, right?
Right?
So what damping does is it just takes vibration and it basically reduces the vibrations so that whatever you don't want to vibrate isn't vibrating anymore. And so with
There's
drywall, what happens is, your neighbor across the wall is blasting a movie, and that wall is vibrating and then re-radiating that sound into your apartment building or house or whatever. And so what QuietRock does is it takes that vibration and it uses damping just to make it so the panels don't vibrate as much, and so that sound doesn't radiate back into your apartment room.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we kind of you're going from like a Jeep Wrangler to like the Cadillac.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, love it. I love it. That's yeah, exactly.
Very nice. Mike, I think I know you've got something you want to share.
Well, Ben, you did a great job. I really don't have to interpret too much out of that. I was thinking I was going to have to pull out the encyclopedia and bring it down to my level. But yeah, what I always tell people is the way QuietRock works is, QuietRock panels are essentially two separate pieces of drywall. In some cases, it's one that we cut in half to make two pieces, but we put a polymer in the middle. That becomes the damping agent, or it's a viscoelastic polymer. So as that sound energy is hitting the wall, that polymer is allowing that board to stretch and move and vibrate. So the two pieces of drywall vibrate independently. So less energy is passing through that board. So, it makes a really efficient wall system that delivers high STC performance just because the board itself is doing the heavy lifting.
Got it. Yeah. And like I was saying to you guys earlier, I kind of geek out on this because I think COVID changed a lot of things for us, because everyone was working from home. And,
Yep.
My husband, when he's not traveling, is working from home. And I was also told learned that it sounds like the male voice can go right through drywall. What do you guys know about that? Because I think unscientifically I could confirm that
Are
it
you
does.
are you living that dream?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
Human speech does transmit pretty efficiently through drywall. Most drywall wall systems. But yeah, that's a lot of it, and that's we'll get into this a little bit. But yeah,
Okay.
you bring up a good point that like in your house though, it's not just drywall.
Right.
You're seeing the drywall, but what's behind the drywall are studs, insulation, maybe not insulation,
Yeah, right.
and then another drywall panel, and you've got them nailed or screwed or however you attach it to the wall. So you've got this whole system, and then you've got gaps maybe around the wall, around the perimeter, or whatever, or outlet boxes, or whatever else you've got in that wall. There's a lot of different components in that wall assembly that all contribute to sound transmission through that assembly. And I think I love that you brought this up, because what I like doing is saying like, well, yes, the drywall is what you can see, but there's a lot that goes into that wall assembly, and it's not just the drywall that's contributing to the sound through that wall assembly.
Yeah, which is why you guys are here, and I'm so excited to talk about this. And I know that there's a lot of like misconceptions that people have about soundproofing drywall. Is that kind of what we're talking? I'll let you dive into that because that there's a lot of details there.
Yeah, there's a ton of things out there that, because sound is complex. It's not linear. It's one of those things that every wall assembly needs to be tested separately. You just can't like throw something up and add something to it and think it's going to perform differently. It will perform differently, but you just don't know how much or to what degree. So we often get questions, from people like, oh, what if I put this or add this? And, if it increases my STC performances on, 5 points on this wall, is it going to do it here? No, it's not. So it's pretty complex in that regard. So people come to the table with a lot of misunderstandings. And oftentimes they think more is better. And a lot of times more actually makes things worse. Um, there's things like Ben was saying about the whole system, studs. If you go from wood stud to light gauge steel, that's a big improvement in sound. If you move your studs from 16 on center to 24 on center, that's going to improve your wall system. So there's all these little things that people don't immediately trigger on because we think, we build it stronger, build it heavier, build it more. And oftentimes that's really tripping us up.
You hope that when you go to the doctor that they've tested the sound acoustics because there's so many times you can hear, you're like, that's violating some HIPAA rules over there.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Right. Speaking of testing, also another tricky thing is that you've got fire rating requirements too.
Mhm.
And sometimes what's good for a fire rating isn't actually good for a sound rating. And sometimes they do align, but sometimes they don't. So that's tricky as well.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's what's more important, acoustics or, well, they're both super important, right? But
Right.
how do they work
So
together? Well, yeah, I mean, I do want to talk a little bit more about testing. So what you were just saying, Mike, if you every situation's different. So how do you test that?
So we use an accredited acoustic lab and do all of our testing. Ben's done, I don't even know how many thousands at this point of acoustic tests on different wall assemblies. And looking at how things interact with each other, looking at those little tweaks, as you move from different wall types, different drywall products, different stud products. I mean, everything has a unique attribute that contributes to the performance of a wall. So, um, each wall has to be tested as it is. And we actually produce a book called the Sound Design Guide. And we publish I call it our top 200 hits. We've got thousands of tests, and we put in 200 of them in this book right now. And you know, the thing that's different between fire and sound is, sound tests are based on mins and maxes. So it gives the designers and the builders great flexibility. So, if you think about it, it'll say, the fire test will say, studs can be no more than 24 inches on center. Okay, that makes sense. Because what happens if you have a door or a window in the middle of the wall? You've got to move that stud closer together. So obviously it's not going to blow your fire rating because all of a sudden you've got one stud sitting at, 8 inches and the next stud is at 16 on center. So that makes sense for fire. But for sound, because sound is so exact, when you move that stud to 8 inches versus 16 versus 24, you're going to get completely different acoustic test report results.
Hmm.
So, it's all about precision with acoustics, and really no deviation from the way the wall was tested. So we try to align. Ben's done a great job of aligning our acoustic testing to fire designs. I know a lot of different acoustic products kind of go out there with these tests about, how great they are. But then when you look at how they're actually building those walls that they tested, they're basically unbuildable. They're impractical, and you can never get the results in the field that some people are reporting.
So does the architect then need to totally understand what's happening in that space to know exactly where to put the studs? I mean, you're saying if it totally changes the acoustics from an 8 to a 16, um, that's got to be something that's really important from the very beginning.
Right. We do it, we do talk with the architects. We try to get them on board to understand. We do a lot of, AIA presentations and lunch and learns to increase their understanding of how acoustic works and how best to design those walls and how best to talk about them in their designs so that they eliminate confusion right at the beginning. It's all about education and just making sure people are aware and get rid of all the fallacies that are running out there.
I love it. Well, let's talk about some case studies because I know that you guys have got to have several.
Hey, Ben, you wanna start this one off?
case studies.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. Well, there was we one of our case studies was a recording studio. I'll go. We'll go really complex, and then Mike will give us some other case studies. But one of the case studies that I can think of is the Lemon Tree recording studios project. It was a really complex project because they were taking a building space, and they wanted to remodel the building space and put a bunch of different recording studios that all could be rented, by recording artists. And that's really tricky when recording studios require really, really strict sound isolation. Any exterior sound could ruin your recording. And you've got a bunch of different artists all next to each other, all trying to master or record sound. So each of those units had to be very isolated. So we worked with the acoustical engineer and with the designer, and it ended up being a really impressive project. We used our QuietRock 545 panel. It's really thick, an 1 3/8 thick panel. Don't recommend it for every project, just this, movie theaters, recording studios. It's really heavy, but also it was very effective at insulating the sound. Very little sound. We tested that project in the field afterwards, and very little noise was able to get through those demising partitions. So it was really successful. Good, like complex, really high stakes, high requirements project that I felt was really cool.
So, Mike, can you tell everybody what are the niche markets where QuietRock should absolutely be used?
Well, it should be used everywhere, right? No,
Yes.
but anywhere there's a sound issue, it's a viable situation for QuietRock. We do a lot with healthcare, so think, hospitals, patient rooms, doctor's offices. It's like you were talking about earlier with HIPAA rules. I mean, how
Yeah.
often are you at the doctor's office and you can hear the doctor coming down the hall or talking to the patient in the room next to you? I mean, that's a huge problem. So healthcare for sure. Hospitality, we do a lot of work in hotels, and everything from corridors to, isolating elevators, isolating mechanical rooms, between hotel rooms, also in like shared spaces, common spaces in hotels. So think performance areas or restaurants, bars, that kind of thing. And then all the way down to, obviously the recording studios and that kind of thing, but residential, multifamily, demising walls, corridors again. But even in single family residential, we do a lot with helping people isolate, bedrooms, bathrooms, basements. And like everybody now is doing podcasts, right? Here we are. We're doing a podcast. Everybody's got a podcast room now in their home. So that's the perfect
Yep.
place, the home office, the podcast room, the amazing amount of recording studios that people have in their homes now. So it kind of spans the gamut of wherever there's a noise issue, we can, it's a viable place to put QuietRock.
I love it. So can I put QuietRock on top of my existing drywall? Because I think I need some.
Actually you can. That's one of
Can
the
I? Okay,
beauties
good.
of it. You can put it right over your existing walls. You don't have to do any demo, and you can just screw it in and finish it just like drywall.
I love it. Well, I can't wait to be your next case study. But anyway, but moving on, tell me what are some key best practices that all contractors should know about?
I'll start this one off. I think one of the think of it this way. If I had a vertical wall and I were to tip that wall over and pour water onto it, if water is getting through, sound's getting through. So making sure your partitions are really well sealed is really important. And you don't have to seal every seam. But like at the baseboard, where there's a gap, and then any seam that's not backed by a stud, if you had an expansion joint, control joints. Also, just paying attention to, so we did a project once where there was, we were doing field testing and sound flanking analysis for a project where the demising wall met an exterior wall, and they didn't run the interior wall straight through the exterior wall, and so you have this air cavity around that corner, and we measured it, and a lot of the sound was leaking around that corner. So even your detail, for how your demising wall meets your perpendicular walls also matters when it comes to sound. Things like window mullions, those kind of exterior details, HVAC systems. If you've got an HVAC duct that goes directly from one room to the other, you're going to get some, sound leakage through that duct system rather than having branches out to a main line.
Yeah.
Things like that are things that like may not typically associate with sound control, but they do matter when it comes to sound isolation.
So Ben, do you have a device?
So how do you measure that?
Yeah, how do you measure that?
Yeah, so that's a good question. No, this is actually a great question because there are standards. PABCO is very involved with ASTM International, which is the American Society of Testing Materials, that creates and maintains standards for how to measure sound, how to do all that, and it's important to know the difference between when I hire a consultant to do just a standard ASTM E335 field test versus having the consultant actually check for flanking. When I have a consultant do a field test and they tell me I've got an NNIC 45 or an ASDC 45, that's great, but that didn't tell you anything about the sound flanking. And so it's important to know the difference when an acoustical engineer is talking about testing, for the sound transmission between the rooms. It's important to check and be like, well, have there been any flanking analysis done? Which is different. You can, in order to do flanking analysis, nowadays you have acoustic cameras and sound intensity measurement devices where you can actually see the leakage points in a camera that's showing your wall. It's pretty nifty. So those are the kinds of things we do at PABCO when we go and field test. We'll hire a consultant to do acoustic camera work and all that other stuff to just see where the leakage is, rather than just doing a standard test. Yeah.
That sounds amazing. So is it like thermal imaging, but for sound?
Yeah. Yep, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly right. Yeah. So it's something that everybody can kind of relate to and be like, oh, hey, right. I can see that. Yeah. So, which is really neat.
Oh, that'd be really cool to see. Instead of being hot and cold, it's like loud or quiet.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Very cool. Well, what are some pieces of advice that you would give designers or builders that want to get better results when it comes to, sound control and all their projects?
Yeah, first thing I do is I tell, the architects and builders and contractors is make sure that they double check their designs. Make sure that they are building things that actually have been tested and you can validate with an acoustic test that's current. There's still a lot of designs that we see come through that are based on, acoustic testing that was done back in the 70s. Obviously those products don't exist anymore. The test methods don't exist anymore. So, look for things that have actually been tested recently, like within the last, 20 years or so, and make sure that they're designing to those tests. Like I said earlier, any deviation from the test is going to give you a different result. So, start clean and start with a tested assembly that you can replicate. After that, like Ben was saying, make sure that you're using the sealants and the putties and so forth. A lot of people think, oh, that's a QuietRock thing. No, that's just a sound practice thing. Every sound wall, doesn't matter how you're doing it. If you're using mass or channels or whatever, using QuietRock, they all need to be sealed up. We're just the only ones that are talking about it, so people assume it's a QuietRock only issue, but no, this is across the board. This is an ASTM standard. So start with that and just be very precise about what you're doing.
So Mike, I'm going to direct this question for you. What's the cost difference for QuietRock compared to regular drywall?
So from a pure cost, material standpoint, QuietRock is going to be more expensive than regular drywall. Because it's got a specific purpose and it's doing something different than what regular drywall can do. But when you look at the entire assembly, how do I achieve an STC 50, for example? When you're using a QuietRock assembly, you're going to get to that point with a less expensive installed cost than you would if you're trying to do something with regular traditional gypsum, like, adding mass or adding channels or clips or something else you have to do to that system to bump up performance. With this example with QuietRock, you literally put QuietRock on one side of the wall and you put traditional Type X on the opposite side of the wall, and you can achieve an STC 50, depending on the studs and all that stuff. But yeah, it gives people sticker shock at the beginning, but when you do the math, and it really doesn't matter if you're in high labor market or low labor market. But we're going to save you a lot of time. We're going to save you um, a number of trucks going to a job site, number of waste going out of the job site. It's just it gets exponential of the things that we can reduce on a project.
Fabulous. Is that better, Andy? So, Mike and Ben, tell me what's the best way for architects and designers and builders to work with you guys to make sure that they're putting their projects together correctly?
That's a good question. So it's definitely a joint effort. Like nobody is working on these things alone.
Right.
So what we do is we work with acoustical engineers and consultants, or recommend a good acoustical engineer and consultant, and then we work with those consultants and the architects and the developers and the contractors, to make sure everything's cohesive and we all got the same information, and what's important about this or that assembly when it comes to sound. So what we found at PABCO is that being a hinge, working with all the other parts has been really beneficial when it comes to actually building. We have all this lab testing, but we want to help people build it so that they're achieving success in their buildings and in their assemblies. And the best way we found to do that is to work with everybody in that at the table.
Absolutely. And if I can add to that too, if you're unfamiliar or don't have an acoustician or acoustical consultant that you've used, get in contact with us because we can help you, recommend some people. Unfortunately, the term acoustical engineer is such a broad term that it's happened to us in the past too, where we've, worked with a client and they bring in their acoustical engineer, but that maybe that acoustical engineering firm, their focus is really about the sound quality within a theater space. And they're not focused so much on the sound transmission of the sound from that theater space to the adjoining rooms. That's just not their specialty. So we've had cases like that where we've actually had to educate the acoustician because it was kind of out of their realm. So, we can help you find people that you can work with.
That's awesome. I love it. Well, you guys, this is such a unique niche in the industry. What do you love most about being part of PABCO and the QuietRock teams?
I would say I ever since I got hired with PABCO, I've been so impressed at PABCO's kind of uh, atmosphere and energy, kind of like like a family. A lot of working together. I mean, Mike and I have worked together a lot across marketing to engineering to manufacturing to sales, and it's actually honestly, I mean, it sounds really idealistic, I guess, but like honestly, seriously, like the people that I'm working with, I feel are the biggest asset at PABCO, and I've been impressed with PABCO's willingness to spend a lot of money and time and energy in research, which I think is really important, especially for this field. And so I've just been really impressed when I come to PABCO and I talk to Mike and I say, well, what's going on in the market? Like what assemblies do we need? And then I go to PABCO and say, hey, we need to do this and this testing, and we should do a test series that covers everything. They're like, okay, let's do it. I love that, like the willingness to do research as well.
Mhm.
What about you, Mike?
Yeah, I know, PABCO is just like such a family atmosphere, right? We've come from, our previous company where QuietRock was born, and it was a breath of fresh air to walk into PABCO where you feel genuinely appreciated, and you've got a company that stands not only with their products, but they stand for their employees as well. It's just a great organization. Like Ben said, just ability to put our best foot forward with testing and make sure that we're the thought leaders and that we um, stand above everybody else and make sure that, like we said, there are situations where QuietRock may not be the best approach for a project. And at PABCO, we've got the ability to say that. We've got the ability to say, well, our product may not work in this situation. So we want to be as transparent as possible, and we're allowed to do that.
That's awesome. That gives you a ton of credibility with your clients for sure. When you say, that might not be the best application, let's try this.
Yep, absolutely.
Which is awesome. Well, you guys, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for geeking out on me with acoustics today. But if anybody has any questions, where do they go? How do they find out more? What's the website?
So the website is www.pabcogypsum.com, and there's a specific QuietRock page on that website, so you can find everything you need to know about QuietRock. And if the question's not there, there's a place where you can send us an email, and we'll get back to you really quick.
Fabulous. Well, thanks again, gentlemen. And if anybody has any questions for us, it is wconline.com. And make sure you follow us on all our social media channels. Stay safe and healthy. Make sure you stay quiet. But we can't wait to talk to you soon. Thanks again, gentlemen.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, thanks, Joe.